Hello, folks. Welcome back to GOT. Today, we're going to talk about the Honor Magic V5 versus the Samsung Z Fold 7, the long-awaited matchup. We're going to compare these two. We're going to talk about design, looks, and feel, the software, multitasking, cameras, other specs, and hardware. And in the end, I'm going to give you my personal view on which one I prefer. Let's get to it. Now, from the beginning, I got this disclaimer I want to throw out there. These are my thoughts and my preferences, and they may not align with yours, which is fine and okay. And I don't mind you commenting in the comments, but let's all be respectful. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm fully aware I'm not covering every single aspect of each phone because this would be hours. We're going to cover how these things look, feel, and operate out of the box. I may get into talking about a little bit of additional software that you can add to the Samsung to make it just that much better. But just know that is not my focal point in this video. So starting with the look and feel on both of these, as you can see, they're both premium devices. They both look gorgeous. Now there's a huge difference with that camera bump on the Honor Magic. As you can see there, it is quite big. But when we get into the camera portion of this review, you're going to understand why and what they're doing with this larger camera hunk. Now they both, of course, have the speakers on the top. With the Honor and the Samsung is just kind of a slit, and the Samsung puts their speakers on the same side, where on the Honor Magic they put it on opposite sides. And what does that make a difference? Well, let's say you open it up and you're playing a game. See the speakers there? It's on the same side on the other side, and you're playing a game. Look at what I'm doing. I am covering the speakers, so I am muffling the sound. So then you say, okay, well, you need to hold it the other way. Well, this other side is where all the heat dissipates, right here. So now you're holding it on the hot portion of the phone. And where does that differ on the Honor Magic? Well, the Honor Magic, you can see you've got a speaker up top here, speaker on the bottom. So here you're just covering one and the other speaker's still there. You're still getting the sound. And then of course, if you turn it this way, same thing, but I guess again, this is the hot portion of the phone. When you're gaming, you don't want to be holding that part. Now, of course, if you've got a case on it, it'll help you a little bit, but that's not the point here. The point is they needed to put the speakers on opposite ends so that you always got sound. Now, looking at the hinge on these things, we talk about the hinge all the time, and the Z Fold actually has the strongest hinge. And I can show you here, just holding it up, you can see here, it will hold almost any position before it closes. So that is one solid hinge. On the Honor Magic, not quite the same. See there, it closes on its own. It can barely hold its own right here. There we go. And then it closes. Now let's talk about feeling the hand. I really prefer the Honor Magic simply because it's curved around the edges, and even on the sides. It's squared off, but it's chamfered a little bit here, so it's curved, so it's not quite so sharp in the hand. Whereas the Z Fold 7, it is pretty sharp and edgy all the way around. There is no curve to it at all. Now, as far as these phones go and thickness, you could see they're both right around the same. Let's turn that over. You can see that the thickness is not any different really on the Samsung just by looking at it. There is another way to tell, and I'll show you that here in a moment. The Z Fold is 8.9 millimeters folded, where the Honor Magic is 9.0, or is it 9.1? I think it's 9.0. So there's barely a difference, but you can definitely feel it when you measure them side by side in this segment I did in a video earlier. I'll show you here. It's down flat here, so you can see the table is perfectly level. And if we put this on here, and it looks like the bubble is leaning towards the Honor Magic V5. So the one it's leaning towards is thicker. And we know this by, if I press this down, see how the bubble moves a little bit more center. Okay. The Honor Magic V5 is slightly thicker. And then if we move it over here to the cameras, check out the cameras. Whoa. With the camera, the Honor Magic V5 is quite a bit thicker on the camera. So you can see without a doubt, this thing is quite a bit thicker with that camera bump. So the last thing I want to talk about on this look and feel is the fingerprint sensor. On the Honor Magic V5, you just touch it and the phone turns on. Did you see that? It was that fast. Just touch it. On the Z Fold, I can touch it. I can rub it all I want. Nothing happens. I have to click it and hold it for it to turn on. That's a small thing, but the reason why is because this button right here, you can see right there, it's sunken in. It's not, it's level with the rest of the phone. It does not protrude whatsoever. Whereas on the Honor Magic V5, you can see it protrudes a little bit. It comes out. It's barely noticeable, but it's there. Again, it's a small thing, but the small things add up. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of this software. As you can see on both of these screens, they're very similar, and we've gone through this so many times on the different devices where you can actually now do large folders, just long press and you can shrink it, or you can long press and go large. And with the Honor Magic, you can actually resize these by just grabbing this any way you want it. You could shape it and make smaller ones. So that's really nice. Over here on the Z Fold, you can't do that. You could just shrink it or enlarge it. Because if you long press, you see there's nothing to shape it whatsoever. So a little more limited. And then on both of these, you do have lots of customizing features. And to get into your themes and everything, on the Honor Magic, you just pinch. And on the Z Fold, you just long press an empty spot, and there you go. And then we're used to them being called widgets. Over here, they're called cards. And on cards, they have theirs that are baked in to the OI right here, or the UI. And then if you want classic widgets from the apps, you just press that, and now you have widgets that you can pull in from your apps. And over here on the Z Fold, you just hit widgets, and you got them here as well on all the different apps. Now, I'm not going to go into all the widgets and how to set them all. That'll be a totally different video on how to. We just want to compare these two right now. And then also, if you go into them both, you can go to wallpaper and do all kinds of specialized wallpaper setting too. It's got different layouts, but there's an additional feature here on the Honor Magic that I really enjoy, and that's right here, changing effect, okay? Where you can change how your page turns. I really like that. And I just really like the box one. And to show you what it looks like here, when I turn a page, see how it just kind of does a 3D kind of effect. I really like that. Now, I know you can do some of these features with the Samsung, but you got to download another app. It's not really a third party. It's called Good Lock, and it's made by Google. You got to go to the Galaxy Store and download it. And Good Lock has another 12 or 15 apps within it that you got to download, and you got to figure out what all the different ones do so you can really customize the phone. But you could do a whole lot more customizing on the Samsung, but you got to do a whole lot of research first, and you got to download additional apps to do that. Today, we're basically covering out of the box functionality and what these things can do. Now, on both of these, you have the news feed on the side, which I really love doing, and they're almost identical. If you can see here, it's the same thing. You know, it's a Android thing. Now, before we get into more software talk, let's go ahead and look at the software on the two of them. You can see here on the Samsung, it has One UI 8, Android 16. And over here on the Magic, it has Magic OS, of course, 9. And we can see down here, it has Android 15. So it's not the most current version of Android, but I'm sure it'll get it soon. And as you can see here in this little window, they give you a lot of information. It is the Elite chip here, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the battery is 5,820 milliamp hours. Whereas on the Samsung, we know it has a 4,400 milliamp hour battery, 12 gigabytes of RAM. So as far as software goes, Samsung is ahead with the most current software, but as far as hardware goes, the Honor Magic really surpasses with the additional RAM and larger battery. Now, when we're on the topic of battery, everybody's asking for a battery drain test. I will do that, I promise you, but it's going to be after I do all the comparisons because it is very time consuming and very draining. Haha. But we will cover that at a later point. Now let's get back to the functionality of these things with the software. They're pretty much laid out the same, you know, and I read comments all the time, people saying it's not as fluid or not as smooth as Samsung. I'm not seeing it. I mean, they are both just as fluid. It is just as seamless, you know, as Samsung. I'm not seeing it. And as a matter of fact, a lot of times it's faster. Now let's go ahead and open these up and we'll look at a couple of things on the inside, and we will talk about multitasking. Now, as you see, they're both kind of laid out very similar. You've got your news feed on the side, and then you got the app drawer just by sliding up on both of them. So very much the same on both. Now, I'm just going to mention here on the Samsung, you could actually have a different screen and set up on the front screen as you do on the inside. On the Honor Magic V5, not so much. The front is the same as the inside, which is my preference anyway, so that doesn't make a difference to me. Some of you, it may. Now, they both work great multitasking. You can pair apps together, open them up at the same time. I really like that. So now let's go ahead and get into multitasking and talk about how they both work differently. So here we go. On both of them, we're going to go ahead and open up Chrome to start with, and it just happens to be my website. And then here, take this and you swipe it to the side, and this is the best way of doing it, I think. I love doing this. Move it out of the way. Then you can get to the rest of your apps that you always use. I'm just going to open up Edge right there. And then over here, you do a two-finger swipe. Two-finger swipe. There we go. And then you can pick it. As long as it's right there, it makes it easy. Then you hit the Edge, okay? And then you got the browser on both of them right here and the website. So both work great here. So now let's go ahead and add a third app, and this is where they really differ. On the Automagic V3, you can come down here, you can take an app, and let's just go ahead and go with my gallery, or is it, what's it called? Yeah, there, gallery. And you could drag it, take this and drag it, and look, it becomes a third app. It was just real clear, real easy to do that. You knew that was going to happen. So there you go. You got 3 apps here. So that's great. Over here on the Z Fold, you can't do that. You bring this up and there's the Galaxy app. It will not go to the side here, and you can split screen. So there you go. You've got it there, but that's not what I want to do. I want 3 apps together at the same time on the screen. So there is a trick to it with the Samsung. And who's going to know this? Okay, you can have to watch videos and understand it. It's just crazy how it works. So anyway, what you want to do is, instead of splitting them like this, you got to open up your first app, and we'll use Chrome. And then from down here, you got to take and open up Edge, bring it down here in the middle. Now, there may be other ways to do this, and some of you will probably tell me, but it still gets really complicated. So you do this, and then you got to take and split it down to a 10-90 split. So there you got a 10 and 90 split. So you can switch back and forth, real simple. Okay, that's really nice. You can actually do that here too by opening this up. And now this thing's 90 and these are 10. Okay, you can switch to any of these. And then you can do the same thing. You can open this one up so it's large. Then you can go back and forth to any of them. And you can actually enlarge this one too. So now you got all 3 full-size apps switching back and forth. Okay, they can be hit and miss. You got to just not hit those 3 dots, which is what I've been doing there. Okay, and then it's pretty clear. So I really like this way of doing it. It makes it real simple and clear, and you know what you're doing, and you can get there every single time. Here, you do a 90-10 split from the top to bottom, and then you come from here from the side. Now, I'm going to tell you that Shane Craig thinks it's a glitch, and I kind of tend to agree because it's not consistent. So from here, if you hit the edit button, that's right here, okay, and then you go back, and then you go in here, and then you can drag an app, bring it here, and split. Now, to me, now you got 2 up top and 1 at the bottom, okay, and you just flip back and forth, okay, but it's not consistent. See, like here, it got to hit over here, hit a blank spot or whatever. It's not real consistent, not as easy, but this is how you split, have 3 on there. Now, I think it's a glitch because this is not working really consistently for me either, and it's really hard to maneuver around. Now, see if the 3 dots are no longer active here. Are they here? Okay, you can't do any more splitting. You can move this one and make it smaller and larger on the top, but there's no more splitting here. And I guess this has to be perfectly center. See, I can't get back down here now. See? So that's why I'm saying it's glitchy. It's not really a thing, although people will disagree and say it is, but it is what it is. I think some people, it may not be as glitchy for others, but yeah, you can get 3 open up at the same time, but it's not something that's meant to be right now. So Samsung, you need to fix that because That'd be a great feature if it worked consistently without any issues. So now let's go ahead and talk about screen brightness on it, and that's been something that people have been commenting a lot about. The Honor Magic V5 says it has 5,000 nits peak brightness on the internal and external screen. Now, if you read the specifics, that's in HDR content. So if you're watching a video or something that's HDR, it's supposed to hit 5,000 nit peak at certain points. So to me, it's just kind of a sales gimmick, because when you look at the two screens outside together, as you can see here, the Z Fold at times actually seems brighter when it's a 2600 nits. And from what I'm understanding is Automagic V5 is actually 1800 nits when it's not moving to the peak brightness. However, there's also the anti-reflective screen on the Automagic V5, which will make it just seem a little bit darker. But either way, both of them are good viewing outside, front, or back screen. Now, talking about performance, both having the A Elite chip, we think they would perform pretty much the same, but that's not the case. And we're going to run some tests here just to find out. First off, I've run Geekbench on both of them, and you can see here that the Automagic V5 ran just a little bit faster in multi-core and single core. And that's with both of them having the same chip. Then I ran the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme test on both of them. And as you can see here in the scores, both pretty much compatible. The Automatic scored a little bit higher on both the best loop and lowest loop. In other words, the Z Fold thermaled a little bit and slowed down a little bit. And then when you look at the temperature, you can see that Samsung ran a little bit cooler all the way through. I mean, it maxed out at 39 Celsius versus 47 Celsius on the Automatic V5. But you can see here, the Samsung's frame rate dropped a little bit more than the Honors did, but the top end frame rate was higher on the Samsung. So between the two of these, they just really kind of tag teamed and swapped off. So I would give this a pretty much a tie. So how do you test this performance in everyday performance and things that you do? Well, I don't do gaming, but I do video processing. So we've got a test here. I've got these two, and we're going to go ahead and run some tests on a video using Power Director, and we're going to see who performs better in which areas. Okay, here we are. We're going to open up Power Direct, and you see they're both just as quick as snappy as each other. And we're going to open up this video. It's a fairly long video. It looks like it's 11 minutes long, and it's got to convert it back to an easy format for fast manipulating here in the program. And they're both going along pretty good, even pace it looks like. But then looks like the V5 is just finishing at 3 minutes and 3 seconds, and right behind it at 3 and 6 seconds is the Z Fold 7. Now let's go ahead and set it up for adding the subtitles. This is a pretty neat program because you can do subtitles in a bubble format, and I like to do this for my short form videos. So we'll get them both all set up here and see if we get a clean start. 1, 2, 3, go. There we go. Good clean start. And they're just moving right along. And whoa, look at that. The Z Fold 7 finished a bit faster, quite a bit faster. Looks like 4 seconds faster. So that's interesting. On the second test, the Z Fold 7 wins. So now this is the real test here. This one's going to be the export. This one takes a lot of processing power. We're going to export it in 4K at 30 frames. As you can see here, this file size is the exact same. So they're even here. Get the clock set. And 1, 2, 3. There we go. Right on time. And look at this. Whoa. The V5 is really flying. I think we're actually seeing some throttling going on here with the Z Fold 7. How far behind is it going to get? Wow, that's a lot of throttling. It's at 78, 80%. You know, we're about to finish here, but how far behind is it going to be? Looks like it's going to be right 4 minutes and 20 seconds. That's 1 minute and 8 seconds slower than the Automagic V5. As you see there, the Z Fold 7 clearly throttled a lot more than the Automagic V5 in this test. The Automagic just kind of powered through it and got it done quite a bit faster. Now let's move on to the cameras. Here's a biggie. We're going to test these cameras against each other, and I'm going to show you some samples, and we're going to talk about it. And in the end, I'll give you my final thoughts. So here I'm sitting in front of my 4K monitor, and we've got the Automagic over here, as you can see on the title, and the Z Fold 7 over here. Now I've got both of these set at the out-of-the-box settings. So what that basically means here is they're shooting on an even playing field. They both are shooting and bidding their photos down to 12 megapixels, even though they might have larger sensors. Now this is the ultra-wide photo. And on the Z Fold, this is actually a 12 megapixel lens versus a 50 megapixel lens. So it's really not that fair. Now I'm going to zoom in on some of these, but just so you can get a better view of the image, because this is not necessarily something you would do on an ultra wide. You'd kind of just leave it for what you've got, but just to show the bit of detail that you get, you can see on the Honor Magic, it's a little bit brighter image, giving it a little more detail in my view. This looks a little more fuzzy. You don't get much of the detail here simply because of the difference of 12 versus 50 megapixels. Let's move on to the standard image. Now we know the standard image out of the box, the Z Fold should be using the 200 megapixel camera, but because it's not using the higher 200 megapixel settings, you can see the file size is small again, 4.7. So you're not getting the clarity, I think, that they claim you will when you use that 200 megapixel lens. Because if we go ahead and zoom in, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see that it's losing quite a bit, I think. It's not as clear as the Honor Magic. Let's zoom in just a little bit more on that playground too, and you can see what I'm talking about. 1, 2. You got a lot more color here in the Honor Magic, quite a bit less. And is there more detail in the bark or the shadows? I'll let you be the judge of that. I personally, I like the Honor because of the color, but they're pretty compatible as far as detail. And at this level of zoom, they both kind of blur about the same. Let's go on to the next image here. This is a 5 times zoom. I think you're going to find the same thing going on, although I think you got a little more color. The Z Fold looks a little more lively here. Zoom in 3 times on this one, or crop in. There's a difference between zooming and cropping. And you can see it's a little more compatible this time on the 5 times zoom lens if you crop in. So that's not bad, but I think you'd still get more clarity out of the Honor simply because it is a 50 megapixel lens versus a 10. Yeah, you can see that there on the bars. They're starting to really blur here. Still got a nice clear image on the Honor Magic. And now this one going in a bit further. I believe this is the 10 times zoom on both of them. And you can see there still really is no competition. If you go in a couple clicks here, let's go in 3 clicks. You can see there's still quite a bit, although the Z Fold seems to be doing pretty well on this one. You can see the bars, everything's a bit clearer. So I might even give it to the Z Fold on this image here on 10 times zoom. That's pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and move in on another image here. This is another 10 times zoom on a different subject here. And as you can see, they look pretty good. If you don't start to zoom in, of course, you can't really read the wording here on the Z Fold that much. And you can see there's quite a bit of blur here. Go a couple of clicks in, and then you can really see the difference. There is, no blur over here as you're getting on the Z Fold. And then the bark, you can't even really see it here. And you can see it fairly decent on the Honor Magic. I'm standing outside a square here in my hometown, just outside of theater. A lot of color around here. Kind of pretty. Got the fountain, so we got a little bit of movement. It's pretty warm out right now. It's about 88 degrees out. And as you can see, the wind is blowing quite a bit. It's quite windy. You may even hear the wind. So this is a good sound test between the 3 of them. Is it sounding good? Are they cutting out the wind? Do you catch me? We'll find out here once I get back in the studio. So let's go ahead and take some photos around here. I'm going to test some regular photos of zoom and of course the ultra wide here at night. Here I'm walking with the video a bit. Let's see how they do. Mark here back in the studio. I just want to point something out here real quick. The Samsung seems to be a little more darker and colorful in video, where the Honor is more darker and colorful in photo. Quite a swap. A nice subject for portraits. Now here we are in night mode on both of them, and as you can see here, the Honor Magic again is using its 50 megapixel night mode, but it's looking a little more colorful than what we get on the Z Fold. Is there more detail? I'll let you decide here. On the Z Fold again, it's using its 12 megapixel because this is the ultra wide shot, and as you can see, the sizing difference is a lot less between the two of them. In other words, you don't have that 2 times file size that we had earlier, so they're a little more comparable. And to me, the Z Fold, it looks a little more washed out. I would actually give this, well, it really depends. You got a little more yellowing going on here on the Honor Magic, so you can decide on. So here's a standard with the main lens. You got a 200 megapixel lens on the Z Fold versus the 50 megapixel on the Honor Magic. Honor Magic's file size, again, you can see there is a little bit larger. It's adding more color. It's a little more colorful than what you get on the Z Fold, but to be honest, the Z Fold represents
the color a little more accurate. This is what I was seeing at night. This is a lot more color being added. I believe you could dial it down if you wanted to in the Honor Magic, but you have to go into settings and do that before you take the photo. The next photo, I attempted to do a portrait shot with this statue here in the park, and it looks like the Z Fold really knew what I was doing and handled it really well. You've got the nice portrait view of this old man playing chess, and over here, not so much. There's no blurring going on. I'm not quite sure. They were both in portrait. You do have a little more clarity here and detail on the Honor Magic, but it didn't quite do the shot like I wanted to. So maybe I need to do some more messing around with that, but there you go. I think the Z Fold won on taking a portrait shot at night. Now moving on, let's go on to the next photo here. This one I did a shot trying to see how they capture the water, if they can get the stillness of the water. And you can see the water all the way through here, I think, on the Honor Magic. And it could just because of all the color versus the Z Fold. You kind of lose sight of it here a little bit. And it could have just been the timing on the shot. Let's go ahead and zoom in and see if we can read the design on both of them, or crop in, I mean. And it's about the same. Actually, it's a little clearer on the Z Fold, maybe. And I think you can actually see a little more detail on the pole. This is interesting. So it almost looks like night shots are kind of a hit and miss on both of these. And then we've got this shot of downtown. Just wanted to see, this was a 10 times, or was it a 20 times zoom? I can't remember. I think it was a 10 times zoom on both of them. And as you can see here at night, the Z Fold doesn't quite do as well as the Honor Magic. You can actually see the second sign still clear in the railroad crossing. You can actually read it here on the Honor Magic, and you cannot see anything on the Z Fold. The same when looking here at the banner. Let's go on to the next shot here. What do I have? The next shot here, I just took your standard shot here, and you can see, I think the Honor is still doing much better on clarity, but again, it's dark, so you may not like that. You may prefer, this is the more natural look and what it looks like. So with the next shot, I went ahead and just did a 10 times zoom on this bird here, as you can see. And again, the same reaction, more coloring and clearer, but more natural on the Samsung. And then I went ahead and went one more. This is a 20 times. And as you can see, the Samsung just kind of loses it. You lost the end of the bird's beak here, where you still have all that clarity here on the Honor Magic.
As you can see, it's no different than all other tests that I've done. When you use the Z Fold 7 outside the 200 megapixel camera, it really falls apart when comparing to the other devices, simply because it has a 12 megapixel ultra wide and a 10 megapixel zoom lens. That just doesn't cut it with all the competition that's out there. And no computational photography is going to bring that poor quality up in the top ranks with the other phones. Samsung, you need to do better next year. So how do you get better quality photos out of the Z Fold 7? Well, you just got to set it to the 50 megapixel or 200 megapixel setting. The files are going to be large, but you're going to get better quality photos out of it. Now, there's another big thing here that the Honor Magic can do that the Z Fold 7 can't, and that's use an S Pen. And as you can see, the Honor Magic can use the S Pen on the inside as well as the outside. So you can use it however you use your finger. And then, of course, you can see the tip. It's not a real fine tip, but it is connected with Bluetooth. Now, folks are asking me if the pen will take photos for you. Let's turn on the camera here. Camera's on, and there's the button. It doesn't do anything, and there's nothing in settings that I could find to make it snap a photo. So, unfortunately, the answer is no. And then on the front screen, you can use the pen as well. As you can see, that's pretty obvious. Pen works just as fine. It's very responsive, very quick. So those of you that need a stylus or a pen lover, well, the Honor Magic got you covered there. Now, just to answer that question in this video, I did on my last one. Yes, you can get Android Auto on the Honor Magic V5 if you have it in your car. No problem. You just go into settings here and you tell it to connect to a vehicle, and there you go. It shows you the cable setup and everything, and you're all set. Now, as I said, I'm going to do a battery test with all these phones, and we can compare them that way. I can only tell you that from my own experience on a daily basis, the Honor Magic V5 and its battery drainage has surpassed all the other phones I have. I come home at the evening and it's not even close to being drained. I can go 2+ days without charging this phone. Now, what is my preference between these two phones? I think you may know already, but for me, I really like the look and feel of the Honor Magic V5, just as I did the V3. It really looks classy, where the Samsung has just become an old look for me because I had them since the Samsung 4, and now we're on the 7, and they really didn't change look and feel. And then, of course, you got Mr. Wobbles here on the table. Don't have that issue here. So if you're at work and you're having to text and make notes, this is crazy. And then, of course, If you really ought to make notes, you have a pen to do it with. And then, of course, there's the cameras. This is just a well-rounded phone. I could take it with me. I don't have to worry about the photos because I know I'm going to be able to capture a great photo. On this, not so much. The AI is better on the Samsung. However, there's too many other compromises by carrying this around because I've done it. I've carried this around as my daily driver and wished I had my Honor. And this was back when I just had the Honor Magic V3. And now with the new multitasking on this Honor Magic V5, it just kind of seals the deal for me. Now, if you want warranty and service, Samsung's got to be the way to go if you don't live in China or in a country where you have service centers for the Honor Magic like I don't here in the United States. So I've said enough. Now it's time for you to give us your thoughts. What do you think? Do you prefer the Z Fold 7 or you're interested in the Honor Magic V5 and you're just afraid because it is a Chinese model that comes from overseas? Is there anything I missed or something you want to correct me for? Because I know you will. Leave it down in the comments below. If you want to see more of my first look on the Honor Magic V5, check out this video here. And I also have a lot of videos on the Z Fold 7, so you might want to check out my library and see what you can find there. And don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. Until next time, have a wonderful day and God bless.